startups. We'll start with an opening prayer, and then we would go into the introduction of our guest, then allow him take his class. Father, in the name of Jesus, we thank you because this is yet another meeting where your sons and daughters will receive illumination for their businesses. We ask that you speak through the speaker. Let the words that come out from him, let them be spirit and life, to the intent that it illuminates the hearts of every business owner who is a part of this, so that by this particular class, they know exactly what to do, how to do it, when to do it, with whom to do it, to the intent that it has very clear effect on their growth as a business person, all through as they begin to practice the things they learn from this masterclass. In Jesus' name, we have prayed. Amen. Okay, we're just going to go straight into introducing our guest. Professor Bongo Adi is a professor of economics at Lagos Business School, Pan Atlantic University, Nigeria. He's a development and maritime economist, corporate strategist, data scientist, and PPP and project finance expert with over 2 decades of experience in research, consulting, and policy advisory, capital raising, business development, and data analytics. His expertise has seen him lead and manage exciting and complex projects on sub-national competitiveness indicator, engineering and benchmarking. He drove the sector and industry competitiveness studies under the Lagos Megacity Competitiveness Project, which he directed at Lagos Business School. He has led several organizational re-engineering projects, including skill set diagnostic benchmarking, balanced scorecard implementation, and manning analysis. He's an expert on agile projects, product and quality management. His clients include public sector organizations, including NCAA, BPE, NSC, Edo State Government, FMW, WAZA, FHF, and a motley of blue chip companies and SMEs. He recently completed a viability assessment study for inland ports and trucks transit parks for the Nigerian Shippers Council, an organization where he designed their current operating model. He currently conducts sector competitiveness studies for several diplomatic trade missions in Nigeria. As a project finance and PPP expert, he pioneered PPP and project finance training at LBS Nigeria. As a technical economist, he is adept in multi-sectoral computable general equilibrium modeling, macroeconomics modeling, and forecasting development to help nurture startups and develop MSMEs. As a development finance specialist, he helps startups and SMEs across venture capital and various support from donor agencies, CBN, and the broader development finance ecosystem. He has sound expertise in managing large grants within development aid contexts. As a regional scientist, Professor Adi undertakes market potential and cluster analysis studies for businesses and sub-regional governments. He is working on an app to integrate economic mapping with ARCGIS for African economies in collaboration with consulting and American GIS company. Professor Adi holds a PhD in regional science and development economics and an MSc in economic development and policy management under the joint Japan World Bank Graduate Scholarship of the University of Tsukuba, Japan. He did postdoctoral training in data mining at the National Agricultural Research Center in Japan. He's a recipient of several awards, including UNU Fellowships 2000, World Bank Scholarship 2000, Japan Scholarship for International Students 2004, 2005, 2006, Japan Society for the Promotion of Science, JSPS Fellowship 2006, and several Best Paper Awards, etc. His research has been presented at numerous international conferences and workshops and has been published in top-ranked international journals. He's a regular economist and business analyst on Channels TV, CNBC Africa, TVC, Arise TV, Silverbird TV, and AIT. He maintains a column on Bongonomics in the Business Day newspaper. He's the chairman of the board of Prime Media Limited, Nigeria's leading online media and functional journalism company. He's also on the board of Clodupos, an edutech startup. He also sits on the board of several other blue chip companies and foundations. He also serves as a member of the editorial board of National Economy, Prime News, and Daily Independent newspapers. His work advancing educational, social inclusion, poverty alleviation, and other charitable initiatives has been recognized with several awards. He's a celebrated policy economic activist who uses the media to keep the managers of the economy on their feet. He's Nigeria's leading policy economist with an international media footprint. Professor Adi is a visiting professor at Noble International Business School, Accra, Ghana. Ladies and gentlemen, please make welcome Professor Bongo Adi to the Association of African Startups. Welcome, sir, and it's indeed a delight to have you here with us today. Please go ahead with your class. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Just. Very beautiful name that you have. And it's my pleasure to meet you today and the members of the African Business Startup. But it appears that we have very few people signed on. I don't know, it's just you and I and not more than 4 people. I hope that is the way it is. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you clearly. Hopefully, more people will join before the day goes out. It's a working day, so I think most people may be on their commute, but we would keep sensitizing those who have registered to be a part of it.
Okay. You can see my slide, I guess.
Yes, I can see it very clearly.
All right. So, my job today is a very, I won't say a simple one, but I think it's a very interesting one. What are the strategies that African businesses can use to penetrate not just the regional market, but the international market? Earlier today, I was trying to come up with a title or a topic for our the Lagos Business School Alumni Economic Outlook for January 2025, and scheduled to take place on the 9th of January. So we're putting things together, and I tried to come up with a topic, a captivating topic. So I couldn't think of what could really entice the audience.
Just me. Your volume is a bit low from my end. I don't know if it's just me.
Really? Okay. So let me see if I can adjust something. That will be the microphone. Yeah. Let's see. Is it better now?
Okay, yes, you can go ahead, sir.
Okay. All right. So I was thinking of an appropriate topic for economic outlook for next year. So what I came up with, considering first what is going on with Trump in the US, prior to the election, one of the things that the now president-elect Donald Trump had played very high was the issue of raising tariff to discourage imports to the United States, because according to him, the United States was losing a lot of trade to their trading partners like China, for example. So he threatened to hike tariffs up to 300% in some instances. And people feel that is not just a threat. It's actually a policy plan, a pillar of the incoming administration in the United States. So that one thing. Then the second issue that is coming up in the rest of the world, especially in the leading global markets, the European Union, Japan, the United States as well, and some emerging markets as well. So we've seen the reversal of the inflation surge. After Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, the world witnessed something similar to the shocks of the COVID period, supply chain disruptions and all of that, especially when it came to energy and food prices, wheat, for instance. So prices, hit the roof, and inflation became the order of the day. But that is reversing. And as a result, central banks have changed their strategy, and most are now more less restrictive, so beginning to loosen up, and then lowering the interest rate. So people are seeing that inflation is going down and interest rates declining significantly. So meaning that the cost of borrowing from the international capital market will be lesser. So the combination of these two events, now the high tariff that Trump is planning to implement in the United States to discourage imports to the United States, I mean imports of certain countries to the United States, and then the loosening up of the world financial market means that the headwinds will be far behind us. So we are looking at tailwinds, kind of. Tailwind is a kind of an enabler for especially African businesses. So what I'm thinking is, how can African businesses or Nigerian businesses or startups in Africa take advantage of the opportunity? Now, with the high tariff, for instance, on Chinese exports to the United States, it means that most of the Chinese manufacturers will be looking for regions or countries or economies where they can avoid or avert some of those huge tariffs that the Trump administration is planning to implement. Okay, and then looking at the ease of access to capital that is coming at at this low interest rates, the cycle that we are encountering. So it is possible for countries to take advantage of this. Find partnership, find linkages with companies that will be maybe leaving China, leaving some of those markets, seeking for new opportunities where they can easily export to the rest of the world to avoid such tariff. So it's actually, I think, a good opportunity for such businesses. So that is why I feel this is a very interesting conversation to have today. So what are the objectives? So am I trying, what will I be looking at? So, well, you actually listed them. At the end of it, participants should gain a deep understanding of the international market, learn strategies for adapting African products to global standards. I'm not sure that I can cover all of this in depth because each of these requires almost like a module on its own. But I'll try as much as I can to see how deep I can go. Now, we explore opportunities to leverage trade agreements for better outcomes, understand effective market entry strategies for international success, navigate legal and regulatory requirements in foreign markets, identify pathways for securing partnerships and funding, develop strategies to boost Africa's economy through global trade. Now, the first thing I would like to start with, let me share another slide before I get back to this, right? There is this, I usually share this in some of my classes, which has to do with the global value chain. Now, so this will kind of set the stage for our discussion. Now, there are so many things on this slide. This is not for this class, especially, precisely, but this bears relevance to what I'm talking about. Now, GVCs, global value chains. But what you observe is that is the absence, what is notorious in the analysis of global value chains is the conspicuous absence of Africa in the global value chain. So what do we mean by value chain? So value chain considers, oh, can you give me, I don't know if you can still hear me.
We can hear you,
Yes,
sir.
we can hear you, sir.
Yes. Okay. The video has stopped, but just wait a moment. I have to change this. And I'm in the school, and for some reason, some issues are.
We can see you, sir.
Can you see me?
Yes, we can see you.
But I can't see you. I don't understand.
Okay. I mean, my video was off, but I don't know if you can see me now.
Let me see.
I can see you.
Okay, that's fine. But you can see my slides too. That's the important thing.
Yes, we can see your slides. We can see your face as well.
Okay, great. Okay, I know why. Just give me some seconds. Go this step back. Okay. All right. Just a second. I want to set things. Okay, so that's fine. I think you can see me now. It's better. All right, so I was talking about the global value chain. So global value chain, the value chain refers to the the value creation process. So from, let's say, from origin, from the origin to the point of consumption. All right. So you can see, let's take the case of, say, a rice producer. So rice, where you produce it, is an agricultural product, primary product. That's what we call it. Now, it has, it's just natural. Maybe the only value that will be added on it will be the processing and the bagging. So at that point, it's still a raw product. But if it is used in the production of, say, rice flour, so that's additional value. Now, rice flour can be converted into so many other things. So that's the value chain of rice until, so it may lead to so many other things. Okay. Now, we take the crude oil that we produce as well. So crude oil, as it's produced, is crude, as the name implies. So it's primary with low value added. Now, as it goes through the process, then, it is now refined. Then you have different products coming out of this original substance. And then those different products can also be employed in different industries, in different uses, again, raising the value. Take the case of coffee as well. Coffee from the farm is just a primary product, but then it can be used, converted into so many other ingredients, into other sources for more advanced production systems. So you can see that as it moves from the primary to secondary, tertiary utilization, the value is enhanced and the value increases, and you have to pay more for it. So that is the thing about value chains. Now, the global value chains, so we consider three different aspects along the chain. So the first one is what happens before production. Then the second is the production system, and the third is the post-production. So we have pre-production, production, and post-production. You can also refer to it as pre-manufacturing, manufacturing, and post-manufacturing. Now, pre-manufacturing, especially when it comes to innovation, is that point the original idea comes about, where the innovator, the inventor, originates an idea, which is, of course, patented. Patent is that the owner has now the right, exclusive right to utilize, benefit from this idea. Some people can say beneficiate this idea or something like that. So he has that exclusive right. So if you want to make use of it, you have to pay him some bit of royalty for using it, or you have to license it from the original owner. So that is where value is laden, in the process. Now, after that level, after that stage, so it gets to the the production or the manufacturing stage. So that is kind of lesser value. In fact, it's the lowest value point, as you can see from the graph shown there. So you see the higher value is at R&D end. Then coming to manufacturing, where the products, let's say something like a computer, right? Dell computer, the idea belongs to someone, Dell, corporation in the US. Okay, they own the patent for this particular machine, this technology. But then the production of Dell may happen in China, where the manufacturing takes place. So that's just a manufacturing process. It has lower value relative to the R&D, stage. Same thing. Compare, relative to the manufacturing stage. You have the post-production, where is the sales, after sales, branding, marketing, consulting. So that is another high value stage in the value chain process. So you have two levels where the value is highest. The first is R&D level, and then the last one is the sales and after sales, marketing and branding level. So those two layers, retain the highest value in the production process or in the innovation process. Then manufacturing is the lowest. Now, why am I talking about this? Now, let's look at this, give an example with Apple in the US. So this is Apple value chain. This is what we normally refer to as the smiley curve of the global value chain. Smiley, smiling. Now, what do you notice here? The basic and apply R&D happens in the US. But then where the OEM equipment manufacturing process takes place, maybe some bit of it in the US, but mainly in Taiwan. Then when it comes to after sales, marketing, brand management, and all of that, advertising, where it is high value adding, it returns to the United States. But the interesting thing here is that we are using Apple as an example. You will not find any African company in the Apple value chain. But most of us are users of Apple computer, or Apple, that will be Mac, or we are using iPhone and all its other products. But none of this value chain, connects any African country or any African economy. Same thing if you look at Samsung, if you take air conditioner, maybe where we appear on the value chain will be, well, it's not value chain. Its consumption chain is different from the value chain. We only appear at the consumption level. So for most products, especially for those high grossing firms globally, you probably will not find African economies or African firms active in their value chains. This has implications for growth. It has implications for company scaling. Now, there is a case I normally use when I teach here at the Lagos Business School, and it has to do with this country in, I think, Southeast Asia or so, Laos People Republic, which is a very small country, right? So I recall one case where the president had to go to beg the CEO of Intel to just set up one of their, research R&D plants in his country, because I think, the Intel chip. So he was able to lure the company to set up one of their plants, their factories in Laos. That created thousands of jobs and actually contributed more than 35% to the GDP of that small country, just because they were able to link themselves to the value chain of Intel chip producer. And also that created so many backward linkages, technology transfer in the country, because there were other smaller firms that were doing some stuff, either services, providing some small parts to the main company, to the main factory where the chips were produced. So leading to so many clustering of different types of firms and activities within a certain area. Which is how a country is able to attract foreign technology and then, of course, scale its own technological capacity and grow. So I cannot never, overestimate the role of engagement in global value chains for firms, how we get into international markets. Because why? It is easier to work with existing value chains. It especially when you are not at that level where you you are innovative enough to introduce a new product. Okay, so of course, if you have the brilliant idea and you are so innovative, you are an innovator, you come up with a new thing, a breakthrough technology or something, then it is possible to, of course, set in process a new value chain, right, globally. Then you're able to penetrate new market. But in the absence of that, the easiest way to get into international markets is to leverage existing value chains. So the question is, how do we connect to existing value chains in different industries, in different sectors, in different areas? I think that is the quick conversation that we need to start having in Africa, right? But let me even ignore global value chains, let's say maybe that of technology like Apple or the automobile or whatever that will link us to the countries outside Africa. In Africa, there have been identified several up to 70 products whose value chains could be fully integrated, domesticated within Africa. I think that's the work that UNDP conducted some few years ago. So they show that there are so many products within pharmaceutical, automobile, agriculture, manufacturing, and which other sector, I think textiles, right, that could be fully, integrated within Africa, meaning that maybe let's say the production of coffee is in Kenya, and then after the production, then it can be exported to Nigeria where some value is added, then exported to another country where another value, maybe in Botswana, and then before the final consumption goes around Africa. So meaning that the entire value chain could be domesticated within Africa. And then they identify this in different sectors, about 70 value chains that could be domesticated in Africa. So those are the things that we need to be looking at, okay? So what are these value chains? How do we get into it? Okay, so I wanted to use this to set the stage for my discussion before I go into the treatment of some of the things I have on my main slide. I don't know if you have any questions so far. Maybe you can keep your questions to the end. Now, okay, so in understanding the international market, of course, that's what we've covered. We've seen the nature of value chains in the global market, how products are interlinked. So you see that every product has a mother nation and original country where it comes from. And then from there, it is managed and then projected to other countries, to other parts of the world. So what are the key international market dynamics or key factors shaping global markets? So we have, of course, globalization, expanding trade, and interdependent economies. We see the role of China, for instance. China has been very aggressive in penetrating new markets, but much of what China does is to open up markets for the export of their manufactured products. Now, that is not beneficial to countries, and we need to be very emphatic on that. It is not beneficial to Africa, because what it means is that first, when all these things, I can give you an instance of when the Chinese made shoes started coming into Nigeria in the late 90s. So prior to that, we already had a highly developed and advancing shoe and leather and hides industry, whereby some Nigerian firms were supplying, how do you call it? Some sort of, intermediate products to Italian shoemakers. So maybe in Aba or some other parts of Nigeria, they will, produce some shoe to a certain stage. Then they are exported to Italy where they are finished and sold as Italian shoes. In that way, you could see that Nigerian firms, okay, SMEs who were in that industry were linked to the global value chain. So something is made in Aba, but then it is used in Italy as an input, as a component in the production of a final good that is sold, distributed around the world. Okay, so that is the kind of beneficial trade relationship. not the one whereby everybody goes to China to buy shoes, to buy everything just to sell in Nigeria, which causes dumping, okay, and then sort of ruins local manufacturing capacity. I don't think that is what we need to advocate, right? So if we are only looking at trading, just buying from other countries and bringing to sell in Nigeria or in Africa, that is the kind of trade we need to discourage. So globalization has made it such that, trade routes have expanded. China has been very notorious in that, opening up new markets where they, push the products they manufacture. And you can tell that over the years, China has become very competitive when it comes to manufacturing. In fact, at the last check, the industrial capacity of China is about, Chinese industrial output just last year alone was more than the industrial output of the United States, United Kingdom, France, Germany, Russia, India, and which other country put together, right? Chinese industrial output was larger than that of these 7 countries together. That tells you how competitive the Chinese are, and then how difficult it is for us to compete with the Chinese. But that doesn't mean that we can't find some niche where we can, plug into, right? So these are some of the global trends that are shaping the international market dynamics. So we see the dominance of the Chinese, and then we've seen also the India rising, okay? But again, we don't see this as threats. It's a matter of us looking at how do we partner with some companies, maybe in China, so that we become part of the value chain, not just consumption chain, not just seeing ourselves as a trading, as a market where different products, manufactured products from all over the world can be dumped. For us to really effectively and productively engage in the global value chain, we need to also add value. We need to be creators of value, right? We need to be creators of value. In that sense, we need to be producers of goods, okay, which are exported and consumed in other parts of the world, even within Africa, okay? So, but the challenge to doing all of this may be the logistic constraints, infrastructure bottlenecks, and all of that. But I know that despite all of this, a lot is happening within the informal system, between African countries. Now, apart from economic trends, we have political influences, on that determine global markets, whether it's geopolitics. As we can see, the de-dollarization agenda that is being pursued by the BRICS, that is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and of course, South Africa. So many countries have also signed up. So many countries like Saudi Arabia have joined them. And then they are trying to mount an alternative to the dollar. Whether it's going to be successful or not is still debatable, but they have whatever it takes to really become a new hegemony, become dominant in the global affairs. Then we have regulations, trade, tax, and environmental policy. I just highlighted how Trump is planning to hike tariff to discourage imports into the United States from other countries. Okay, and then we also have fiscal policies fostering economic growth, stimulus, as well as subsidies all over the world. Again, that's another important thing that affects global trade. Countries use a regime of subsidies, especially in agriculture, whether it is in Europe or the United States. By giving subsidies to the agricultural sector, it means that it's not possible to compete. If you are an exporter of an agricultural product from, say, Nigeria to the United States or to Europe, when those farmers there enjoy subsidies, there's no way you can compete with them on price. So subsidies, kind of, go against the tenets of free international trade. Then we also have trade pacts, regional agreements, boosting market access, like we have AfCFTA, African Continental Free Trade Agreement. Now, that is the one we have here. There are also some bilateral trade agreements. We have the ECOWAS. If you follow in the news, you've heard, I think just this week or last week, the ECOWAS giving, I think, 6 weeks, whatever timeline to the 3 countries that are trying to delink from it, to reconsider their status and I mean their position and so on. So those are all regional agreements. In the Southern African region, we have that as well. In the North America, you have the NAFTA. In the Asia Pacific trade agreement and so many. So there are regional trade agreements, there are bilateral agreements between 2 countries, and so on and so forth. Right. So all of this to facilitate trade interactions between and among countries. Then another thing is the technological advancement. So today we're talking about e-commerce. So it's not only physical trade and not just e-commerce. We have fintech revolution that has actually made it easier to move currencies across different corridors. Something that was almost impossible in the past, but with the fintech, today, it is possible really to close transactions in different currencies, regardless of where you are in the world. I mean, that's also creating some sort of difficulties for the monetary policy managers. Then there's the issue of green, the climate issue, climate change debate, green technology, sustainability practices, which have also shaped, what markets, what people could do, what is legitimate and what is not. And then that is also shaping the world of finance, what gets financed and what doesn't get financed. So you have to meet certain sustainability criteria, of carbon neutrality before you are able to access certain markets, so the regulations and all of that. So those are some of the issues that we find in the international market dynamics. And then for any entrepreneur or startup that is interested in engaging with the international market, it's important that you are familiar with some of these trends, because they will influence or they will determine what is viable and what is not, and how you choose to play in the market. Okay, so the other one is consumer behavior. So of course, the key aspects, you have regional preferences, there are cultural influences, which differ from country to country. And then one of the key things is that any business that wants to enter a new region, the first thing you need to understand is the regional preferences, how do people behave? So attitudinal differences, influenced by culture and all of that. So those are some of the things that we need to be conversant with. Now, again, competitive analysis, so we need to understand who are the dominant players, okay? So what is the nature of competition? And that comes from a very rigorous analysis of the market, studying the market, because before you can penetrate the market, before you enter into any market, the first thing that has to happen is that you undertake, key, market intelligence analytics, of what are the drivers of competition, what are the drivers of preferences in the different markets. How do we identify key global markets for African brands? Okay, now we have the emerging markets, we have high value markets, and then target market selection. Now, emerging markets, we have opportunities in Asia, the different countries in Asia. Again, like I said, how easy is it for an African business to penetrate, let's say, the economy of Asia or Latin America and other regions that have high demand for African products? We can see that our fashion and entertainment industry have made, very good inroad into some of these markets. Yeah, but then beyond that, if it has to do with other products, I don't think we have succeeded as much. Now, part of the challenge that we have with those markets will be with distance, like I've mentioned, infrastructure. Okay, infrastructure. Beyond infrastructure, we also have policy and regulatory issues that undermine, the ability of our businesses or of our entrepreneurs to access markets in other regions of the world. I think it was last year that Akinwumi Adesina, the president of the African Development Bank, in one of his engagements, said that what he refers to as trade cost seems to be highest. It's very high in Africa, but seems to be highest in Nigeria. What do we mean by trade cost? Now, if you want to move a 20 container of goods, maybe you want to export to any region, let's say 20 containers of goods to China, it costs like 3 times more to do it from Nigeria than to do it from Ghana. Now, if you compare what it costs to ship from Ghana to what it costs to ship from Sri Lanka to China, it's a lot lesser to ship from Sri Lanka to China than to ship from Ghana. So you see those trade costs. Now, some of them are as a result of the configuration of so many forces beyond our control, but most of them are just man-made, because of the way our people do business, the challenges, the constraints that we face at the ports. Okay, so at the ports, just as this tax debate is ongoing, I think that's the major thing ongoing in Nigeria right now. I was on TV the other day, and I was asked my view about the tax policy, whether it is going to work or not. And I was very emphatic, and so I said that our problem is not that people don't pay tax. I doubt that there is any business, even the roadside traders, they pay a lot of tax. Just take a sample, the Okada riders here in Lagos or in Nigeria, any part of Nigeria, ask them, before they can move each day, they pay some taxes or levies or whatever you call it. But then the challenge is that sometimes most of what they pay do not make it to government coffers. So the problem here isn't that people don't pay tax, is that government does not have the institutional capacity to really, channel all the fees and taxes and levies that different businesses pay to its coffers. So there is what we call institutionalized brigandage going all over, which causes a lot of leakage in the government fiscal system, and which we need to address first. It's not that people don't pay tax. Okay, so now that increases the cost of doing business. In other words, people pay a lot of tax, multiple taxation, and the cost of doing business is high. The cost of moving goods from one point to another in Nigeria is extremely high. And then, when it comes to international movement, it also increases. So these are some of the things that limit our access, our ability to engage with other economies, So, and why I think that the best strategy for us, for any business that wants to engage, globally, is to identify the successful, brands, and then, find a way to leverage, their value chains. How do we add value to existing value chains and then use that to scale our business rather than, starting new businesses, except when it is clear that we're able to really, navigate through the intricate processes of moving goods from one country to another. Otherwise, I think it's better to leverage existing value chains. Key factors impacting international trade in Africa. Of course, in Africa, we have issues with purchasing power. One thing that is clear from the data is also that African purchasing power has been dropping for quite a while now. If you consider what inflation has been doing to African economies, although inflation is reversing in some countries, but purchasing power has been, increasingly dropping. Now, that also has to do with the value of our currencies. I doubt there is any African currency that has managed to maintain its value over, since the period of the independence of most African countries in the 1960s. Whether it is South Africa or Kenya or Ghana or Nigeria, countries have gradually and increasingly lost the values of their currencies. And then as the currencies drop in value, so do the purchasing power of those currencies. So what means that people become increasingly poorer. Although it is more manifest in some countries than others, especially in Nigeria, because earlier today I was also in another panel where the IMF guy, was making a presentation. I was on the panel. So he showed that, okay, so whereas per capita income seems to have remained resilient in some African countries, but in Nigeria, it has been the other way around. So purchasing power has been dropping. And then purchasing power, of course, determine the viability of products in terms of demand, the robustness of demand, because people need to have money before they're able to, their discretionary income determines what they're able to buy, and that determines the level of aggregate demand within the system, which translates to business viability. Then, of course, economic stability, whether low inflation, currency stability, employment rates, and all of that again. So all of these, fluctuate in so many African countries, but we've seen some, countries that have managed to maintain some level of stability, maybe Botswana, Rwanda, and some of the East Asian countries to a certain extent. But in this part, in Western Africa, it has not been that. We've not been that lucky, especially in Nigeria. Okay, of course, I've mentioned trade infrastructure and logistics and the constraints to that. Then another factor is cultural sensitivities. So what works in one place may not work for another. The language and communication. Now, we have an advantage in Nigeria in the sense that we are largely English speaking. So, and English is the dominant language of commerce globally. So that we are English speaking means that we are able to penetrate so many markets quite easily. But of course, yeah, customs and traditions, affect, international trade. And then the kind of agreement, relationship between countries, regulatory issues are also other dimensions of impact on trade in Africa. So how do we, to penetrate new markets, to enter new markets, or to access new markets, what sort of tools do we need to equip ourselves with knowledge of those markets? The first thing is that we need to acquaint ourselves with reliable data. Look at World Bank, IMF databases. So what are the macroeconomic indicators like, GDP, trade balances, economic growth, GDP per capita, educational level, consumer preferences, things like that. These are indicators or data that we can easily access from the World Bank databases. Then we have the International Trade Center. We have the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development that gives us information on what countries, what countries export, what countries import. I think that is very highly informative. If you go online and, for instance, what you type in Google, what did Nigeria export in 2022, for instance? So it will give you this observatory of international trade, which will bring out the trade profile of different countries. I think more than 150 countries are there. So that profile, the trade profile, gives you the specific goods and services that countries trade with different countries. And then it also gives you what each country trades with every other country in the world. So that gives you an idea of what sort of products, sell in different countries, and then, how you can play. So those are some practical tools that can help us to gain some understanding of global markets. Then the other one would be that we have to conduct some sort of market research techniques. Yeah, we have to conduct some sort of market research. And then what are the techniques that we employ? There is this pestle analysis, political, economic, social, technological, environmental, and legal factors in potential market. These are some of the issues that you cover when you are doing your business plan. So whatever it is, before you go into a new market, the first thing is that it's a new business, you have to do a business plan. So to do a business plan, you have to cover the market, what you call a feasibility study. To do the feasibility study, you have to do a pestle analysis to understand the conditions within that market. And then understanding the conditions will enable you to quantify the type of risk that you're likely to encounter. Then you do a little bit of industry analysis and then do SWOT analysis, which is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats specific to entering the market. Are we still together?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
We are
sir.
still
We're here.
All right. So strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats in the market. Okay. And then again, another one is the market segmentation studies. Break down the target demographics, consumer behaviors, and purchasing patterns in order to refine your strategy, to engage in the new market. So how do we enter so to get into new markets, of course, there are so many opportunities which we can find within existing trade agreements. For instance, in Africa, we have AFCTA, okay, which is 90% tariff reduction. So, which is a low-hanging fruit for us. So, if we want to push into any African market, we are sure that we are covered under the AFCTA agreement. I think every African country has signed this covenant, which binds all of us to 90% tariff reduction. So, but I think maybe in one of your future programs, it would be nice for someone to take a look at what AFCTA is all about, what it covers. I don't know if you've had such lectures in the past. I think it's something that entrepreneurs like yourself need to really arm yourself with. Then there is the AGOA, African Growth Opportunity Act in the United States, okay? So which is duty-free US market access. Now, the last time I checked, many African countries have not really leveraged taking advantage of AGOA. AGOA started, I think, around 2000, during the time Clinton was still the president of the United States when they promulgated the AGOA policy, so which grants Africa's products free entry to the US market without passing through the rigorous sanitary and phytosanitary regulatory constraints. So, but many African countries have not taken advantage of all of this. So again, I will suggest that in future, someone will need to break down the AGOA. What kind of products can you send to the United States that will not be that can benefit from the African Growth Opportunity Acts in the United States, so that it doesn't come under undue sanctions by the United States. There are so many things that are so many products from Africa, whether it's agriculture or textile or whatever, in industry goods that are not subjected to strict regulation under the AGOA Act in the US. Then we have the EU-African trade deals, preferential treatment for so many African markets. African economies or African goods originating from different African countries entering the EU. Okay, so again, we need to understand how to navigate tariffs and different other trade barriers. So we have tariffs, but trade policies or trade agreements, bilateral agreements help to, eliminate some of that. Then there's quotas, and then there are also non-tariff barriers, like I talked about, sanitary and phytosanitary measures, certification, rules of origin. Non-tariff barriers could also include all these sustainability issues. Okay. Then others would be maybe subsidies, tax breaks, training programs, government-led capacity building programs, to enhance, capacity in certain areas so that to build competitiveness. So navigating legal and regulatory requirements is a very, I think this is key as well. So to penetrate or to enter new markets, we need to understand the regulatory environment. Okay, when we have done our pestle analysis, do our SWOT, the next thing is to do the market entry strategy, which will help us with the nature of the legal and regulatory requirements in any nation. Of course, it is important for us to be ethical in our dealings. Being ethical means that we have to comply with all the regulatory mandates. So what are the taxes like? Understand the tax obligations in target markets so that we don't fall flout the law. What are the labor laws? And then what they permit, what approvals do you need to obtain them? Then another thing is intellectual property protection. So again, understand what is obtainable in each market. Some countries are a little bit lax when it comes to intellectual property. For instance, countries like China, right? So there is a way they protect intellectual property in China. Maybe they protect it, or sometimes they purposely, go against all these things because, they want to build capacity, build competitiveness anyhow. But it is important for us to understand what intellectual property is so that we don't use other people's intellectual goods without attribution or without proper licensing. Okay, so understanding the risk inherent in each market and how we mitigate or those risks is very important. Sometimes it requires that you have to engage with a consultant. At other times, it means that you really have to do that heavy lifting by yourself. So how do we identify the best entry mode, exporting low cost, low risk way to test foreign markets? Yeah. I think the best thing for a Nigerian business right now is to find a way to venture into the export market. Now, with our exchange rate the way it is an incentive, a positive incentive to export. Now, our currency is trading very low to other countries, other currencies. It means that if you're able to put anything together and take it to another market, then coming back with the returns or the profits you make, that is actually huge. So this is the reason why countries, that so-called export-dependent countries, let's say China or Japan at some point in their history, or Taiwan, when they were growing using the export-led model, they unilaterally devalued their exchange rates, something similar to what is going on in Nigeria. So they devalue their exchange rate because they want to gain export advantage in key markets. So what it means is that given the low exchange rates, it becomes cheaper to buy their goods, okay, rather than them buying from other countries. So that created a positive incentive and enabler for export-based businesses. So I think where we are in Nigeria, this is the time to encourage export, whatever it is that you can take to other markets. I think, that is a huge benefit in terms of attracting foreign exchange and in terms of building local capacity and enhancing our access to foreign markets. Then, like I've mentioned, how do we leverage the global value chain? Through joint ventures, okay? Finding partners across the globe. And they have some, existing products existing, whether it is softwares or whatever that we can license so that we can become local operators of a foreign license. So again, how do we, that's help us to get into the global value chain. Now, another one is franchising, replicating successful business models abroad. Okay, so we can franchise with, use franchising. I know some of my friends who have gone to Canada. So what they did was to take, acquire franchises of existing businesses and started to replicate those businesses, and they're doing very well. I know a couple of guys in Canada who are doing that currently. Okay, so in order to do that, we have to conduct thorough market research to understand consumer needs, adapt products and services to align with cultural and regional preferences, evaluate competition and regulatory requirements, just as we've been saying, then build brand awareness. I mean, there's no gainsaying that fact. Okay, how do we secure partnerships and funding? Forming strategic partnerships, identify potential partners aligned with your business goals. I think that's the function of research. Build relationships through trade fairs, industry events, and networking platforms. Okay, you have to be aware of what is going on in your area. So what are the business conferences? What are the investment platforms and trade conferences and whatever? So you need to make yourself available to all of those to build networks, to build the necessary connections. So again, there are many opportunities for trade finance, for venture capital, for grants, right? It depends on what it is. If you are in the intellectual property, like the softwares where you can now go into venture capital and all of that, I mean, the techniques and then the processes are quite clear, which you can find all over the place. So there are some grants, but then, these are all competitive. So before you are able to get them, you need to understand what the rules are, and then, of course, make sure that your product or your idea is up to the level where it can, attract such grants. And then utilizing the diaspora connections, to identify opportunities and build trust. This is also another thing. So collaborate with diaspora-led organizations for market insights, leverage cultural and linguistic familiarity to its market. There's something the Lagos Business School does. We started it this year, and for next year, I think they have read out for each month, there will be 1 or 2 visits to other partner institutions abroad: France, Italy, India, United States, Germany, and so on. So they take alumni on other businesses who are interested. Of course, they pay some money, they transport themselves. They go to look at what are the opportunities existing in those markets and how they can take advantage of such opportunities. So Lagos Business School promotes such kind of engagements, enabling local businesses to access, to identify, access, and then get into very viable opportunities abroad. So those are some of the things I think you entrepreneurs need to, arm yourself with. Okay, strengthening local supply chains. These are also other opportunities locally. Invest in export revenues, promoting intra-African trade, Africa trade. Okay, so these are all opportunities to boost African trade, African economy through global trade. Okay, so we conclude with a case study of Ethiopian coffee in the US market. How did Ethiopian coffee make it to the United States? So first of all, branding and cultural identity. They position Ethiopia as the birthplace of coffee. So this is just a function of branding and marketing. Highlighted unique varieties, use storytelling to connect with consumers. And then, of course, they applied fair trade practices, secure fair trade and organic certifications. They made sure they got all the certifications to appeal to ethical consumers, empowered farmers through higher prices and improved practices, right? From that back home. And then they formed strategic partnerships with Starbucks, for instance, collaborated with NGOs and the government to improve supply chains and marketing back home. Now, they targeted niche markets. So collaboration. Now, I understand there are so many as it is right now. It depends on the niche that you want to play. There are some Nigerian businesses in the UK, many Nigerian supermarkets, Nigerian eateries all over the world. So how do we build connections with this scene? For instance, if you're interested in exporting, let's say agriculture, or maybe our yam, our vegetables, agricultural products to all these markets. So the way to start is to find a way to build some sort of relationship with existing businesses abroad, and then use them to begin to penetrate those markets. I know that it might be, you may be considering what may be, how do we go through that? It might be challenging and all of that, but of course, what is not, I think the most important thing is for us to conceive the idea. Once we conceive the idea, the way to go about it will definitely come. Okay, so there are pitfalls that we need to avoid: cultural misalignment, ignoring local preferences and values, poor understanding of consumer behavior. We price wrongly. We don't conduct our market research, and then we don't brand effectively, and we don't market, as we should. So these are some of the way the practices or the failures that could undermine our ability to engage in other markets. So the key takeaway here is thorough research, cultural adaptation, and strategic pricing, so that they are essential to avoid costly missteps in international market. So in conclusion, unlocking Africa's potential in the global market, we have to empower African brands globally, strengthen brand identity and market reach, leverage e-commerce for global accessibility, innovate to meet international standards. The most thing here is about engagement. We have to engage globally. Okay. Our entertainment industry has actually given us, how do you put it now? They've given us the template to do that. It's interesting when you go to any club in the world, you really have that sense of pride when you realize that more than 30 to 50% of the music that they play is actually Nigerian music, right? So these guys have made it. So that's a template that we can use. How did they make it to the international market? When I was growing up, there was none of us who were listening to people like Tupac, what do you call them? All of them. So they were just North American, Black American music. Only very few Nigerians. I mean, I grew up. I came of age in the 90s or 2000. But you could see that today, nobody listens to any other thing. We are now dominant, not just in here locally, but even in those foreign markets. Those people that we used to listen to their music, they are now listening to our own music and then collaborating with our own people. So those guys have given us a template that we can always utilize to good advantage. I think that's where I raise my case. I don't know if I've been meaningful, I've said anything that helps, but I appreciate this opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much, Professor. This is a very detailed, very, very detailed class. I believe that anyone who is serious about penetrating the international market needs to listen to this class again and again to be able to draw all the lessons and be able to take strategic next line of action from everything that has been taught today by Professor Bongo. Thank you so very much. I'm not sure if anyone has questions. I know Professor needs to go. He mentioned earlier that he has another engagement for 6. I heard that when he said it earlier. I'm not sure. Does anybody have questions so that we can ask Professor Bongo before he goes? If you do, please just feel free to unmute your mic, or you can drop it in the comment section so that we can pick it and address it as quickly as we can before he leaves. I believe that the opportunities he has mentioned, they are enormous, and the strategies he has mentioned, they're applicable for every person who is serious about penetrating the international market. I know he mentioned market research, pricing, strategic pricing strategy. If you're going to enter into that market, guidelines that can help any entrepreneur who truly wants to do business at that level. Okay, from what I see, I don't seem to see that there's any question or anyone raising up their hands. Professor Bongo, we want to say thank you so much. When I read through your bio, I saw a lot of things that interest me personally. That means, I mean, it speaks to me that there'll be many more engagement between us and you at various capacities. that we represent. I see that you are a PPP expert, and that's a very strategic area we're also interested in as part of the subsidiaries that we run. So yes, we'll be communicating with you again and again and again for subsequent engagements. Somebody says, I thoroughly enjoyed the session. Thank you so much, sir. Somebody else says, thank you so much, sir, for a great session. Thank you. I know everyone thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you so much, Professor Bongo, once again. From all of us at the Association of African Startups, we say a very great thank you for doing justice to this topic. Yes,
Thank you
everybody
very
say,
much. Thank you,
yes,
and may God bless you. I wish you all the best, and Merry Christmas in advance.
Thank you so much. God bless you. Thank you so much, sir. We're grateful.
All right.
All righty. Thank you, everyone who's joined the class today. Please do well to catch the replay. He said a lot of things that needs to be unpacked, a lot of very deep things that you need to unpack and master. And I pray that as you do so, God will give you, the grace to be able to action each and every one of them in Jesus' name. Amen. God bless you all. Take care and see you. Bye. Abiola, if you have anything to say, please go ahead.
No, there's none from him.
Fantastic.